Welcome to BibleLink. It's great to see you today. BibleLink exists to help link the Bible to real life, your life. Today we're in chapter 12 of Genesis. This is one of the most important chapters in the Old Testament. The focus of the story now turns to Abram. Later on you'll know him as Abraham, and his life is going to take center stage here over the next few chapters. God's call and the promise of blessing will be given to Abram, and it's going to shape our understanding of the people of Israel. What's notable in the first 9 verses of this chapter is God's call, about how he promises a blessing and about how Abram responds with faith in God. God calls upon an old man and his whole family, and he tells them to go to another country. He calls them to finish the journey that his father Terah had started, a journey to Canaan. If Abram is faithful, God will choose him, and bless all people through him. A blessing, if you think about it, it's a gift. It's a gift that leads to goodness and well-being. And Abram, he trusts that God's going to come through for him. So he goes on and goes to Canaan, and he worships God. Now, God's call for us today may be hard like Abram's call was, but don't forget that the call for us also has the promise of blessing. Are you aware of the promises God made to us in Jesus? We have the promise of forgiveness and a good relationship with God. We also have the promise that God is always, always with us. We have the promise that God is working for good in all the situations that we face. We have the promise that one day Jesus will set everything right. We have the promise that God will guide, lead, and direct our lives. We have a promise that God protects us and watches over us. We have the promise that God wants to give us good gifts, and we have the best promise of all, God's unending love toward us. Sometimes thinking about the promises of God makes it easier for us to embrace change and take a step, kind of like Abram had to do. Have you ever thought about how God's promises of blessing affect your life? What promises do you cling to when things get rough in your life? Now in chapter 12, there's also this crazy story involving Sarai and Pharaoh. Abram fears that he might get killed because his wife is gorgeous. She's beautiful. And adultery was a no-no in their culture, but killing someone to get their wife appeared to have been accepted. Abram tells them that Sarai is his sister, which wasn't a total lie because she was actually Abram's half-sister. But he doesn't tell them that Sarai is his wife. The man who God has chosen to be this person of blessing acts very selfishly in this moment. So he pawns his wife off to Pharaoh, who takes her as his own wife. And when we read that, that means that the marriage was consummated. Abram gets rich off Pharaoh's giving him gifts of goodwill to Sarai's brother. And God's not pleased with this. In one sense, God's not happy with the adultery that's going on, even if Pharaoh is committing it unknowingly. But in another sense, I think God grieves for Sarai, and he comes to her defense, working to save her from this situation. Abram, he acts out of fear, and Sarai, she acts with sacrifice. She's trying to preserve the life of her husband. And even Pharaoh, he acts noble. He rebukes Abram, saying he should have been honest at the beginning rather than mistrusting and conniving. And Pharaoh, he doesn't even punish Abram. He returns Sarai to him, and they leave. They leave in shame. Sometimes our examples of integrity can come from unexpected places. People of God, yes, the people you know who love God, can make big mistakes. And people of a completely different faith ground can sometimes be the generous ones. You see, God cares and God works to free people from evil circumstances. And God also, he never gives up on us, even when we make a mistake. Have you ever seen someone who professes faith to make a bad choice like Abram? Have you ever made a choice that you regret? When was the last time we stood up for a person who is in a bad situation? Lots to think about today in chapter 12. What spoke to you? Thank you for engaging in BibleLink. Join the conversation on Facebook, ask questions, share your observations, and invite someone to join us.